Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. Courtney Mims alongside Mike Irwin. And Mike, we got a whole lot of questions this week, so we're going to dive right in. And I love how you started this episode. We're going to start off with our favorite question asker in Mousetown, who asks, are you ready to admit that I was right and you were wrong last week when I said the open date would kill the momentum for from the Tennessee win? Well, that isn't exactly...
No, we've got a graphic of what he actually said. Right?
Okay, all right.
And what I said last week was I didn't know if it would or wouldn't.
Right.
And what did he say? He didn't say, I know the Hogs needed the week off, but I'm worried that it will kill momentum. He didn't say it would. He just said he was worried.
Okay.
So he's not so sure about that. But here's the dumb part. Plus, they saw how much trouble the Vols had with Florida, and they have to be asking if the Vols are really just overrated. So in other words, they would sit at home and watch that Tennessee-Florida game and go, oh, I guess Tennessee's not as good as we thought. We have no confidence anymore. That's not what happened. Absolutely not what happened. If you want to know what happened in this game, it's pretty simple. First of all, LSU played their best game of the year, but they were starting to trend that way anyway. They almost blew the Ole Miss game. Ole Miss blew that game. They were up, should have been up big, but they weren't. And Florida hung around, and then starting a little bit before the fourth quarter, because I watched that game, they stopped making mistakes.
Yeah, LSU, yeah.
LSU stopped making mistakes, and they won the game. And I thought to myself, if they play that way against Arkansas, they are going to be hard to beat, and they did. I mean, they were throwing the ball well. I mean, you talk about Nussmeier and who his daddy is.
Yeah, well.
I mean, you know, you got an NFL coach as your daddy. A quarterback's coach, right? I mean, how better prepared can you be for that? So this was a guy that didn't have a lot of game experience going into this season, but he kind of waited his time, and it might have taken him 3 or 4 or 5 games to kind of get his feet. They're going to be tough from here on out because of him, and they've got good receivers. The other thing was their offensive line was good.
Yeah.
Very good, and they ran the ball. So it wasn't a matter of, I think there were some issues there with Arkansas, but it's like everything. All of a sudden, all these fans, these whack jobs, what did they do? What was good about the open date week? For 2 weeks, those people ran and hid in the bushes like they always do, and they were nowhere.
Yeah.
And social media was taken over by an opposite problem. What is that problem? Oh, we've arrived. We may win out.
Oh, I know what that problem is.
We could win this whole thing. So put yourself in the position of those players. Suddenly, everybody's telling them how good they are.
Yeah.
And I think it may have affected them. Maybe it'd be a little rat poison.
Rat poison. That's what I was about to. I was like, where's the rat poison? Here it is.
So no, I'm not conceding anything to you, Mousetown, because you didn't say they would have a problem. You just were worried that they would have a problem with the layoff and losing momentum.
I think my biggest annoyance is I think I understand what you're saying there, but I think for Arkansas, it's really beating themselves. And that's what we've seen in every single loss. Because what showed up in this game? Turnovers, guys. How did they lose?
You can't shake it. I mean, the
How
games
did they
that
lose
they
to
won,
Oklahoma State, you know?
Yeah, the games that they won this year, they cut down on turnovers.
Exactly.
No turnovers against Tennessee.
Exactly. So you lose to Oklahoma State, turnovers. You lose to Texas A&M, turnovers, right? You lose to LSU, turnovers show up again. And so I think for Arkansas fans, they get so upset because, and I do too, because you're seeing the same mistakes come up, you know, again and again and again, and you're going, why?
This team, I've been trying to say this, I'm a lot more patient than most of you. Because I've watched this for 49 years, and I know how it works. Let me make a little comparison.
Okay.
Let me make a comparison between this football program and the basketball program, which went from Nolan Richardson, who was kicking butt and taking names. They fire him, and everybody thought, oh, here comes Stan Heath. Boy, he's going to be really good. Nope. Fire Stan Heath, then you got John Pelfrey. So here's the deal. I would compare Stan Heath to Brett Bielema. Oh, we got this guy. He's been real successful at this other place. We'll bring him in here. And then he wasn't. So we get rid of him, and then what do we get? We get John Pelfrey, who is the basketball version of Chad Morris. And then everything goes boom and crashes. So then what do? They get Mike Anderson. What did Mike Anderson do? He stabilized the program.
Yeah.
He didn't get them doing what the fans wanted, but he stopped the bleeding and started it slowly back up a little bit. And what did he do? He paved the way for Eric Musselman.
True.
I think that's what's going on with Pittman right now. I think he's trying to stabilize the program, build it back up so when they replace him, the next guy is not starting at the bottom. I think that's exactly what he's doing, and I applaud him for that. And I wish you people would shut up, because you need to know what's going on over there right now. I don't know if he's gone after this year. It may be another year before that happens, but eventually he's going to step aside, and he wants to leave the program in better shape, just like Mike Anderson did, for the next guy who then can come in and take it to the next level.
Well, he's talked about that multiple times. I mean, the thing that people admire about Sam Pittman outside of Hog fans, and it just, in general, if you're a college football fan, they always go, when I hear him talk, I think he cares so much about Arkansas. I mean, some people even believe he's from the state. That's how, he talks about it like he is.
The criticism he gets is so stupid. Now we've got these people saying, if you watched him on the sideline, he watched Nick Saban, he would get mad. He wouldn't put up with that situation where the targeting call was changed. He would go crazy. Sam Pittman is more even-tempered. Now, I've seen him get mad before, but he's not some guy. And it's almost like they think that the players are out there on the field and they turn over and look at Sam Pittman and go, he's not mad. We don't know what to do. That's just idiotic. Players do not sit there on the field and turn around and look at their head coach to see if he's angry.
Well, and the other thing, too, is every coach has a different temperament. But if you were in that press conference after that loss to LSU, you would see there. I mean, I told people, I said, how was the press conference? How was the press conference? I said, it was deflated. I mean, he was disappointed.
Yeah.
And I always say, when your dad's mad at you, or your mom's mad at you, it's different when they're mad, when they're yelling at you. What's even worse is when they're disappointed in you. So, I mean, I think he was very disappointed.
People that aren't over there, aren't around the players, aren't around the coaches, make all these assumptions about the way things are, and they do not know because they're not there.
Absolutely, Mike. We're going to get into a little bit more of that in this episode, but let's go to the next question, which is from Hog Redneck, who asks, some fans were saying after the game that Petrino is making a mistake, trying to turn Green into a drop-back passer. Do you think Bobby should come up with a more designed running plays for Green?
Well, first of all, I think Bobby Petrino knows what he's doing without help from the fans or me. Okay, so that would be the first thing I would say. Secondly, he would have never, this is a misunderstanding on the part of these people. He would have never gotten Taylon Green if he had gone to Taylon Green and said, hey, I've been watching you up there at Boise and you can really run. We're going to have a lot of cool run plays for you. He didn't come here for that reason. He came here because he wants to play in the NFL and he knew he needed to develop as a passer. And that's the process that's going on right now, but because it doesn't happen instantly, but because he continues to have some problems, they don't get it. Now, let me tell you what I saw in that game. I saw an open date week in which it's clear to me that Bobby Petrino in that open date week said to Taylon Green, look, you've got the problem with the knee anyway. And by the way, he was fully mobile. He wasn't. We saw him 2 or 3 times kick out and run off, and he had speed. But I think he said to him, I don't want you running around all over the place, taking a chance of getting that knee hit again, and then you're gone for the year. So I want you to stay in the pocket. I want you to throw to your first choice and stop passing off on your first open receiver. And that's exactly what happened in the first 2 drives. If you go back and bother to look at it instead of just being mad, he was dropping back, moving up in the pocket. Well, he wasn't dropping back, he was already there, but he was moving up in the pocket very quickly and throwing to open receivers, and the receivers were doing a really good job of getting open, and they went right down the field. And they scored a touchdown. They also got a field goal. They were moving the ball. In the second half, he made that one mistake because they were on about the 6 or 7 yard line, and he tried to throw into a heavy pass rush, got it knocked down, got it intercepted. They were at the 2 yard line. That turned a 6-point game, and then they went for 2. Turned 6-point lead into a 14-point lead. The whole team quit at that point. They just stopped playing. He did. Everybody did. LSU got into their heads. That's the first time that's happened all year. What people said this team was, That's the only time to me they've looked like last year's team, and it still wasn't as bad as last year's team, but they kind of stopped playing there in the fourth quarter. It's going to be real important to see them bounce back from this. But that's the only thing I will concede about this team being last year's team. In the fourth quarter of that game, when they got and really part of the third quarter, when they got down 2 touchdowns, I thought everybody just kind of surrendered.
They did. If you watch people were leaving the stadium. I mean, the stadium was empty basically by the last 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. I mean, there wasn't a lot of people left, and kudos to you if you stayed, but it kind of did feel like they had given up. And so I agree with you there. I think the biggest thing about Green, and we've talked about this on the show before, is that when you say he would benefit coming back from another year, I think he absolutely would, because some of the things that he struggles with, you see during games when and I'm not talking about pressure from a defense, I'm just talking about pressure in a game situation.
Yeah, pressure, just all of a sudden, oh, it's on the line, I've got to do something here.
Exactly, where you see him start, it's like he gets jittery and nervous, and we've talked about that on the show, and part of me wonders, so maybe he would benefit from a sports psychologist or something. Maybe he would benefit from someone going, okay, look, you're going to be in these situations because you're in the SEC. You're going to be in tight game situations where it's going to be on the line. And how do you handle that? And how do you settle in and calm down? Because even Jaquindon Jackson, he said it 3 or 4 times. He just needs to get out of his own head sometimes.
Right.
And so I don't know what the solution is for that. Maybe a sports psychologist, like I said, but sometimes I think that's where he gets caught up in making mistakes. Eddie Lynn says, I think a big part of our problem against LSU was Jaquindon Jackson's injury. Healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the country, but he's been battling that leg injury for several weeks. He only had 5 carries.
Yeah, I think it's really more leg cramps and then an ankle injury. But Eddie Lynn, I've known him since the 4th grade. He knows football.
Yeah.
And he noticed that. I didn't see anybody else mentioning that. When your best running back, the one guy that can make yardage out of nothing, and the blocking wasn't good, but if that guy's healthy, it's a different game. And he gets 5 carries. And now, on Monday, Sam Pittman said he's very doubtful for Mississippi State. This is not good.
Yeah.
This is a really important game coming up, and it looks like to me they're not going to have him.
Yeah.
So the O-line needs to really buckle up this week because they've got to do something to reestablish that running game.
Well, Sam Pittman said Jaquindon Jackson was questionable today. We'll see what his designation is on that Wednesday.
I thought he was very doubtful.
It says he said questionable. Alyssa can back me up there, but I was listening. Very questionable. There you go. So not doubtful just yet, but we'll see when that Wednesday injury report comes out. It sounds like the way.
I mean, look what he does though. He comes off the bench, runs for 8 yards, looks fine, but he gets tackled and then he has to be carried off.
But that was it. That was his problem last year at Utah. I mean, he was asked about that in a press conference. Go back. He was asked about that.
Well, then
hey,
why
are you a bit inconsistent at Utah? And he goes, well, I wasn't completely healthy.
Well, somebody needs to go up to him and say, stay on the field. We're tired of you being carted off.
I understand, but that's what Utah fans were upset about. I mean, again, that was one of the critiques he had last year is if he can stay healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the nation.
Well,
so that's showing up again.
This question gets to the heart of a big part of that game, and most people aren't talking about it.
Well, you have Jaquindon Jackson dealing with injury. You have Rodney Hill, who's been dealing with injury. And so you're down to Braylon Russell really taking that load, a true freshman. And R-Dub, yes, exactly, R-Dub as well. And I think R-Dub, he's a good back. We've seen what he can do. It deflated him when he fumbled. I think that really changed the course of the game for them when he did that, when he had that mistake. So again, we're talking about mistakes, but we're going to move on from that. Razor Alex 88 says, I'm trying to contain my fury and it is not going well. So here's an angry question. What did this team even do over the bye week? Play video games?
Okay, that's angry.
But
first of all, I can't answer that question because I wasn't there. So I don't know, but I doubt they were playing video games. Based on what Sam Pittman said during the bye week, it sounds like a typical bye week. I don't care who you are. I don't even think Nick Saban did this. Most of the time when you get to a bye week, you have practices, but they're not full-scale practices. You're going easy on guys. You know, you're not doing a lot of contact. You're just mostly trying to get them to stay in shape, but you want them to recuperate from bumps and bruises or more serious injuries, and you might have one kind of more contact practice than the other, and that's what he said they had. So I don't think that the bye week had anything to do with that. I don't think they were supposed to continue to kick these guys in the butt during the bye week. It was important. They needed to get people healthy, and I don't think that's what happened. I think my other explanation, which was they had 2 weeks for people to say, boy, you're really good. I think you guys may win out. You start hearing that as opposed to you stink, I mean, it changes your mental attitude.
Nick Saban talks about it. That's rat poison. We don't want to hear it. So
I would say that it's at least a sign that this program is getting better, in that they had a rat poison incident, because they would have never had any rat poison last year because there was no reason to be overconfident.
No. And I will say this, some of the players did get a chance to go home and see family and stuff, because Taylor Green talked about in the press conference.
What happens when you do that?
Well, Taylor Green talked about it in the press conference. He said, yeah, I was a little bummed because I had to stay here and get healthy and not go home over the bye week. Some people got to go home, and I didn't get a chance to see my family. So, maybe that was another thing. Maybe that affected him. You never know.
But I think going home and seeing your family, what are they going to do? Tell you how
good you are. True. So, but he didn't get that. So I know some people did get a chance to go home and see family, but they definitely just didn't spend their time playing video games the entire time, like Razor Alex 88 might have said. Pig's Feet says, I'm confused as to what constitutes as targeting. Me too, Pig's Feet. Green was hit helmet to helmet on the sideline the first quarter, and they didn't pay attention to him at all. Broden was lucky to walk off the field on what I would classify as textbook targeting. It was overturned. George Safety Jackson was disqualified from the Texas game for targeting, very similar hit to LSU. What am I missing?
Yeah, okay. First of all, kudos for bringing up that original targeting against Talon, because I saw it. And I went, what was that? They didn't even review it, didn't do anything. So that's the first problem with officiating in that game. Now, this targeting thing, they call targeting, and it gets overruled. Now, I realize that this is not on the field people. That goes to the SEC review people on that targeting. But if they follow the rule, it's supposed to be clear-cut evidence that the original call was wrong. Well, let's take a look at the original video, which you see the guy that made the contact. He launched himself at Broden, right? Launched himself.
Yes, he did.
It was his shoulder pads, not his helmet, but that can still, and he caught him on the chin and the lower part of the face.
So the face and the neck area,
And so you see, I don't know how they did that. I don't know how you undo that. How you call that not targeting.
I'd like to get an explanation.
It was a huge blow to Arkansas, because if it's called, you move deep into LSU territory. If it doesn't, you're back on your side of the 50.
Again, I'd like to see an explanation from the SEC officiating offices on why that was overturned. And two, I turned to somebody in the press box and I said, clearly I don't know what targeting is, and clearly I don't know what pass interference is, since we've been missing a lot of these calls today and in this game. The officiating in that game, we could go on for hours about it, because I just didn't.
That call was a puzzler to me.
Yeah, there was a bunch of calls that were a bit of puzzlers to me, and I know fans felt the same way on that. We're not going to spend any more time on that because we have more questions to get to. Razor Booth says, biggest game of the year is this week. We must beat Mississippi State to meet any goal of this season. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're probably right. There's no, well, this year has been so weird in terms of everything changes. This is another thing about fans. I wish you'd pick up on things if you're out there reacting every week to what's happening now. I realize that we're all told to live in the moment. In your personal life, yeah, live in your moment. Don't look ahead too much. But when you're talking football, and especially as inconsistent as things are this year with everything changing week to week, come on. What happens this week may not have anything to do with next week or the week after that or the week before or anything like that.
Well, especially this year in the SEC.
Yeah, so come on. I mean, this is big. But it would not shock me to see them lose to Mississippi State and beat Ole Miss. Yeah. I mean, these kinds of things have been happening not just to Arkansas but other teams all year long.
Yeah.
There are surprises every week. So I hesitate to say that it's the absolute biggest thing. I tell you why it's big. Because if they lose this game, then the whole internet goes crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And you got those people pulling on your ankles again. and it gets worse.
Well, there's people that haven't watched Mississippi State play this year, I bet, that are talking about this game, and they're looking at their record right now, which is 1-6, and they haven't won a conference game yet. They're 0-4 in the conference, I believe.
But they're getting better.
But they're getting better. I mean, if you watch those games, you kind of look at Mississippi State and you go, they're not a pushover. They are absolutely not. Go ask Georgia, who beat them by just 10, when they were hugely favored in that matchup. Go ask Texas A&M, who was also favored big time in that matchup, who beat them by 10. So they can hang around, and they're hungry. Right. That's what scares me about Arkansas running into this team that is hungry for a conference win. So hope they're taking it seriously. G.A. Hogg asks, what's the story of Jaquindon Jackson's black tag hanging off of his waist? I assume it would rip away or pull off, as in flag football, should a tackler grab it in stride.
I think to get a real answer on this, we're going to have to wait until Jaquindon is in one of those player interviews, because I'll just be real honest with you. I'm not going to tell anybody. Jacob goes over, Alyssa goes over to the Sam Pittman's press conference every Monday. I don't expect them to ask a question like this with the problems they've got. Can you imagine? He's in there trying to deal with the disappointment, and we're asking him, what's the deal with the tag hanging from this guy's? We're afraid maybe as people are grabbing it, and it causes him to be tackled. Look, there's one thing. We've talked to people, and most people think it's some sort of an attachment thing for a towel.
Yeah.
And sometimes he doesn't have the towel.
Exactly.
So you see that thing.
Exactly.
But I promise you, they don't have it put on him in such a way that you could reach out and grab him and tackle him.
I'm sure if somebody grabbed it, it would like rip off very easily. Like, I don't think it would hinder that. But again, we'll have to ask Jaquindon about that. But I'm pretty sure it's just where you would put your towel. That's
We'll try to answer this question, but not right now.
That's a very weird thing to notice, to look in and be like, that is the
black. If they were winning games right now, yeah, you go in there and ask that question. I'm not going to ask that question this week.
No, exactly. Top Hog 19 wants to know, what is your choice for a bowl for the Hogs, and if you could pick the other team in it, who would you like to see?
I do not
You hate this.
I want them to go to a bowl game. I don't care what bowl game it is. Obviously, the bigger the bowl means they have a better season.
Yeah.
And yes, you would want that.
Yeah.
If you could get a bigger bowl than the Liberty Bowl. It seems like every time.
That's the thing. I just don't want to go to the Liberty Bowl.
It seems like every time Arkansas wins 6 or 7 games, they go to the Liberty Bowl.
And they've just been to the Liberty Bowl so much. You want to see
I saw a projection that they're going to go to the Liberty Bowl and play West Virginia. Well, if that's what happens, that's what happens. It wouldn't be a great matchup, but it is what it is. Whoever they end up playing, wherever they end up playing, I'll be okay with that.
But it's the Liberty Bowl, Mike.
Well, I mean, you'll take that over no bowl.
I guess. I guess.
Believe me, there are worse bowls than the Liberty Bowl.
I get the Birmingham Bowl, which they're also projected. Are they
terrible.
Also projected for that one too?
Yeah, at that terrible stadium.
Can we get like a cool bowl? Like, what about like the Music City Bowl, or
That's a good one.
Yeah, exactly.
I even like the Vegas Bowl. I went there one year.
Okay, the Vegas Bowl, I've heard, is a very fun time.
It's a very fun time. They used to have this old dopey stadium you had to play in. Yeah. Now you got a good one.
Oh yeah.
Stadium.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I mean, the Vegas Bowl, I'd like that one. Vegas Bowl, Music City Bowl, I like Gasparilla Bowl.
Yeah.
That's fun. Okay, all right, we'll go with any of those. How about that? No Liberty Bowl. Okay, thank you. Hot Dogger asks, so do we already have injuries on the basketball team? All these exhibition games could be detrimental to the health of these men. Hope they aren't too banged up.
Okay, based on those two, they were kind of exhibition practices. And
like glorified practices.
It was a charity thing where they brought kids in and got them shoes and things like that. And one was in Hot Springs and one was Pine Bluff. There were 3 guys that didn't participate. I'm assuming those are the guys he was talking about that are injured. Let's start with junior forward Jonas Adu. Okay, he is a senior guard. No, he is a junior forward.
Yeah.
And I think isn't he the big guy from Tennessee?
He is. He is the transfer from Tennessee.
You would need him in a regular season game because he's your biggest, most physical guy. And he was a shot blocker last year. Yeah, he was a rebounder, and he could score. Yeah. It sounds like to me he's not going to play against Kansas unless he suddenly gets better. Okay, John L. Davis, he's that transfer guard, their best experienced guard in terms of he He was one of the best shooters in the country from 3-point range, 2-point range, free throws.
Yep.
He's
Came
your
from
shooter.
FAU. So.
Yeah, he's your shooter. You would want him. Well, it looks like maybe he's not going to be in this game. And then junior forward Adu Thiero. Is it Thiero?
Thiero.
I think it's Thiero.
No, Adu Thiero.
Okay.
I promise.
Thiero is the way they have it in the guide. But anyway, he's a power forward from Kentucky who was really good, shot blocker, rebounder, did decent scoring, 8 points a game, something like that. But he missed a key part of the season last year because he was injured. Well, then he was healthy. Well, now he's injured again. So you got to worry about that. How long is that injury going to last? That may be more serious. So I don't think you have anything to worry about him playing these guys and getting them injured in the exhibition games, because he specifically said nobody that's injured is going to play in any of these exhibition games. Nobody. Yeah. It'll have to be the regular season, and then he will decide. Yeah. And then, of course, all the Kentucky fans have jumped in because anything that is written in the media about Calipari, they just bird dog it. Oh, yeah. And they come and say, well, you're going to find out he leaves these guys on the bench anyway because he doesn't know who the better players are. So just get used to it. They're so helpful.
They are very helpful. They just let you know things before they happen. It's great. It's great. And if they're wrong about it, then they quietly into the mist. They go quietly.
Go to the bushes again.
They go to the bushes again, like that Simpsons meme, right to the bushes. Mm-hmm. I will say this, for everybody out there who's excited about this exhibition game, I am also excited about this exhibition game, but don't be shocked if these guys just don't play. And that's not something to go, oh gosh, what's happening? We're injured. Don't freak out. He's
already said basically they're not going to play if they're still injured.
And he even said at SEC Media Days, he looked right at, I think it was Bob Holt who asked the question, he goes, if they're not 100%, I'm not playing them. Right. He goes, if they're even 90%, I'm not playing them. You know, they could be look good, ready to go. No, I'm not playing them if they're not 100%. So don't be shocked if that happens. And maybe Kansas does get the win the exhibition game. That's okay. It doesn't count. Everybody can breathe. The basketball season isn't over.
They had the big win over the #1 team in the country in their exhibition game last year. And what happened?
Yeah,
end of the year, that didn't really matter much.
Yeah, it didn't matter much. Well, it didn't count, did it? So anyways, Lanny wants to know, which team is the best in the SEC for football? Wow, that's a really hard question.
It changes every week.
And
I guess he's asking me what I think, because it's just my opinion. I mean, 3 weeks ago I said Tennessee. I said it right here. I thought they were the best. Yeah. Okay, then they got beat. I probably reluctantly switched to Texas at that point. Now they got beat, so it's back to me, Georgia.
Okay.
And I'm sure some people would put LSU back up there. But who knows it's just going to be different every week. I'm telling you.
It could be LSU, could be Texas A&M, could be Georgia. I mean, I would say just based on how Georgia's played this season, maybe even Texas A&M or LSU. They look really good right now. So who knows? It could be Vanderbilt, Mike. They got into the top 25. It could be them. Okay, they have to play Texas this week. They might
prove. What if they pull off the upset?
I would love it. I would love it.
That'll propel them into the top 10, right?
That would be. Maybe top 20. I don't know if they give Vanderbilt that much respect and put them in the top 10. I think they should. Hoggy Style 78 asks, do you think that Greg Sankey or the NCAA will address and remedy all of the fake injury flopping going on right now in college football?
I saw one of those in the Alabama-Tennessee game. Did you see that?
I think so.
The player comes off the field. He's an Alabama player. He comes off the field. His assistant coach, I think is a position coach, he gets to the sideline. He pushes him and says, go down. So the reaction to that was, these coaches need to be examined for player cruelty. He went off on his own player, and of course it was fake.
Yeah.
But it's pathetic. And everybody's doing it, not just Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Everybody's doing it. I don't think they're going to do anything about it. I gave my solution last week, make it a player safety rule.
A bunch of people love that solution.
And anytime you're down on the field and have to be attended to by a trainer, that's a serious enough situation that you should be withheld until the next possession.
A lot of people love that idea. I just want to say, Mike, people were like, why hasn't this been implemented? So.
And you could pass it off as just player safety.
Absolutely.
I mean, the guy might have been legitimately hurt, But how do we know that he's okay after one play?
And the NCAA is all about player safety and making things better for the players.
So we just be saying, hey, you may say you're ready to go back in, but we want to watch you for the next 5-10 minutes.
There you go. I like that solution. Whole Hog Alum 87 says, NIL and the transfer portal appear to have brought parity to college football. Do you see the sport adopting the NFL model in terms of a salary/NIL cap, which could potentially bring even more parity to the sport? You've talked about this on the show before.
We think it's happening. We're not sure exactly the way it's going to find the final product, but I think it's going to happen sooner than later. And yes, I think what they will be trying to do is even out the money, because it will go from all NIL money to only partial NIL money going to players. Most players, unless you're the high-profile guys, the quarterback, the wide receiver, or whatever, or a great defensive lineman or something, most of these guys will get money from the school, and it'll either be a standardized amount or it'll be whatever the school decides to give each one of them. But it will put you in a position where it's going to be difficult for another team to go into the portal and say, hey, come over here to our place because we'll give you a bunch of money. Well, they're probably going to offer the same as your school is, so why would you leave?
Right.
So there's that. And then if you consider the high-profile NIL people, there's a proposal that I've read that there'll be a cap on this, more like a salary cap. There's only so much you can get. So if you're getting this much from this school, you probably can't get more from another school. I think they'll go even further than that. I think they'll have you sign a contract if you do an NIL deal. And if you break that contract, you have to sit out a year, and that will really kill it. Because that's what you're really trying to do. You're trying to prevent coaches and teams from poaching somebody else's player because they're having a good year.
Correct.
And bringing them over.
Correct.
And I think if they do institute these reforms, it will pretty much eliminate that.
I also think it would really, really help because when you bring up salary and NIL caps and all of those, you're really talking about having like a players union or a players association and maybe doing a CBA or a collective bargaining agreement, right?
Exactly. If they put these players in a union, they will vote. Do you accept this? If you do, there's no lawsuits.
Right.
You've agreed as a part of the players union to go along with this.
And maybe there are some things
that's
that
how the NFL does it.
And that's exactly kind of, I believe, what they should implement in college sports right now, because the further we go down this road without something like this, the further it's going to get out of hand. So you want to nip it in the bud quicker, and hopefully you will start to do that by allowing the schools to pay players with a certain amount of money, right? Which is what they're trying to do.
If they're in a union and they agree to go with the provisions of that, then it makes it much more difficult for you to try to go around suing people because you didn't get this or that.
Exactly, especially when you sign like a CBA
because
and you agree to that.
If you want to be totally like the NFL, how about we institute a draft?
And
when
nobody wants that.
No. You want to tell some top quarterback at some high school anywhere in the country, we're going to send you to Boise.
Yeah.
We're going to send you to South Alabama.
Yeah, because they had a bad season, and so
it's not going to happen.
No, it won't. That'll do. Pig asks, have you heard of anything that is being done to make sure that we keep our offensive and defensive coordinators? Losing them would be like starting all over again.
The only thing I know is if you don't fire the guy that hired them.
That is a way to keep them.
There are people that are saying that, if you brought Barry Odom back here, he would keep them. I don't know that. Nobody knows that.
Why would Barry Odom keep these guys?
He's got his own guys.
Yeah.
So I don't think if you get rid of Sam Pittman, my basic guess is both of those coordinators will be gone.
That would be my guess too, because I had this conversation literally today, and I said, why would he keep them if you hire Barry Odom? Because his defensive coordinator was the linebackers coach here, Michael Shearer, and I would keep him. And then you have the go-go offense guy who's being commended by all of college football right now. So why would you keep the guys here, and why would they want to? You also have to ask them what they want too. That's the biggest thing. When we talk about this whole thing of Sam Pittman being fired, everybody usually goes, well, but I'd like to keep Travis Williams. I'd like to keep Bobby Petrino. I don't know if you are going to keep them. Exactly. I don't know if you're going to do that, guys. So ask yourself, what means more to you? I don't know.
You want to keep those guys, keep the guy that hired them.
There you go. Marty Bird's Proxy asks, what's your take on Tony Bennett abruptly retiring at Virginia? The story out there is that it was related to NIL/the portal. Any other stories circulating?
I don't think so. There was some, when it first broke, there were some people just speculating that maybe there was some scandal or some terrible
Or like
thing,
a health issue.
or a health issue, and then that turns out to not be the case. We've got his statement, I believe.
Yeah, I
and
think
I think
so,
it's pretty
yeah.
clear.
Oh, wow.
And what he's talking about is what we were talking about before. He's sick of this. He's sick of pulling players out of the portal, stealing your players.
He isn't the only one.
And so here's what he's saying. There's got to be a collective bargaining there. It has to be a restriction on the salary pool that teams can spend. There has to be transfer regulation restrictions. And he also says there has to be some limits on the agent involvement to these young guys. There are good agents and there are bad agents, and they're driving some of the stuff that we're in right now.
Yeah.
I commend him. He's throwing himself under the bus. And you told me a few minutes ago when we were talking about this, you think he's not the only one.
I don't. And you guys know on this show, I talk to my dad a lot who's in that world, and he talks about it all the time. He says there's going to be more coaches, I'm sure, that are gonna retire over this.
Everybody thinks Saban retired because of his age. He basically said he wanted out of that situation. There's nothing to say that if they institute these reforms, you might see Saban back somewhere else. Might come here. It might be a Calipari deal.
Whoa, Cal and Saban at the same school?
Saban has recently said some really good things about Arkansas.
He has, yeah.
He predicted they would win. That didn't help.
I know.
But he likes this school. So I'm just saying, you'll get some of these coaches, I think, that may leave if they don't, and I think it's a wake-up call. I think what he's basically saying is get off the stick. We've been hearing about this. Do it. Make it happen. Stop sitting around talking to the courts and all this. Just get it done.
And maybe his retirement, saying, I'm done, I'm out of this, maybe helps some people wake up to it. Maybe goes and says, wow, Nick Saban's retired. You have Tony Bennett retiring. If there's more, and I do believe he's not the only one. I really do believe that there will be more coaches that retire over this. If there's more, they have got to wake up. They have got to wake up.
They just need to speed the process up.
Yeah, I know, and it's baffling.
I'd like to see it next year.
You want to see it next year? I want to see it next year.
By 2025, I want to see this stuff in place.
Absolutely. If it's not in place by 2025, I think it's gonna spiral. It's gonna go like this, and we're just gonna see more and more and more. So hopefully it does. I hope so. Big Daddy Kane wants to know. Big Daddy Keen, I don't know. Whatever he is. Did you see Illinois and their helmets against Michigan? Thoughts on us doing a throwback helmet and a uniform? They had a uniform too.
Yeah, but the helmet is what you really notice, and I did see it. When you looked at it from a distance, it really looked like they were wearing leather helmets.
I thought they were.
And it was a throwback. I guess they won a national championship in the leather helmet era.
Yeah.
And then even when you saw the close-ups, it was pretty cool because they did some kind of, I'm sure it was a decal that they put over the helmets.
It was, yeah.
But it made it look like a regular helmet, made it look like it was leather. So I thought that was really cool. What about Arkansas doing that? Well, if they did it, they would probably do the national championship helmet, which a lot of people would like that. And it might work now. Let me just say that I was in high school the year Arkansas won the national championship, and my friend Eddie Lynn, oh, he was bonkers over them, and he made me watch all of their games.
Yes.
And I kept asking him, because TV wasn't then what it is now. It wasn't high definition.
Yeah.
And we were out in Lubbock, west of Lubbock, so about 60 miles from the TV stations, and it would be all fuzzy at times. But the helmets looked like they just had a big white blob on them.
Yeah.
I was like, what's that white blob on their helmet? And he said, well, that's the Razorback decal. I said, it doesn't look like, just looks like somebody threw paint at it. I think today, in HD, that white, and it is a different Razorback. It's the 60s hog, and he kind of is all scrunched up. Looks a little
I know
weird.
what you're talking about.
It's not my favorite hog, but he's all scrunched up and kind of running. And if they put that on there for a throwback, I think it would work better now than it did back then because you at least would be able to see what it is.
I think it would be pretty cool. The only thing about those uniforms, I just didn't like the actual uniforms. I liked the helmets like you. I thought those looked cool, but the actual uniforms I didn't really like.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind the 60s football uniforms for the Hogs. Let me just say that people think that I'm so old that I remember leather helmets. I actually do.
Like I thought you were going to say, I actually don't, but you go, I actually do, yes.
When I was in the 7th grade, we came in for the first day of football.
Okay.
And I've talked about Coach Vanoy. He was just mean as sin. You know,
Yeah,
he's the meanest coach I've ever been around in my life. He had no patience with anybody. But we had 38 kids out for football. And so they were passing these practice uniforms around, trying to size everybody, get the right size pants, the right size this and that. And the manager goes over to him and he says, "We're short about 6 uniforms. What do we do?" And there's about 6 guys that don't have them. And he said, "Okay, go back there in that equipment room and there's a barrel back there, open it up." So they drug this barrel out, looked like a big beer barrel, wooden beer barrel. And they drug it, rolled it kind of sideways and brought it out and opened this thing up. When they opened it up, it smelled like the most musty smell. I'm thinking that barrel had been closed for 25 years.
Oh.
It wasn't stinky, it just smelled musty.
Oh,
So
I still don't like musty
smell.
smell.
It was like whoosh, it comes out at us. And then he starts pulling these uniforms, and there were leather helmets in there. Leather helmets. And I'm going, oh, I'm glad I've already got mine. So they stick these leather helmets on these 6 guys, and they get out there. And one of them is Jerry Wayne Mings, who was a friend of mine. And so what Coach Vanoy decides is he's going to run these guys off because he doesn't want to put up with these funky uniforms. So every one of these guys that have these funky uniforms, he's going to get rid of them.
Okay.
So he takes Robert Maddox, the biggest running back on the team, big guy that was about 14, he's about 2 years older than any of us. He'd already gone through puberty. We hadn't. We were 12 and still had little weak arms and things, and he's all muscled up. So he lines him up, and he lines us up in a gauntlet, and he makes these guys take turns trying to tackle him, and he throws Robert Maddox the football, and then Maddox runs over these guys and knocks the fool out of them. And then they get up stumbling around and they decide they want to leave. So Jerry Wayne, bless his heart, he was one of my friends, but the guy just was never very athletic. But he wanted to play football so bad.
Aww.
And he gets down there and he's all ready to try to tackle Robert Maddox. And Maddox runs over him, knocks him backwards in a flip, and he ends up sitting on the ground facing forward again. Maddox is already behind him, scored. Yeah. And that helmet was too big for him, and it's spinning on his head.
No!
It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. So he got up and walked off, and then you could see all of these guys walking back to the field house because it was about a block all the way to the field house, and you could just see them kind of in a row, little spaces. And Vanoy goes, "I don't know if any of you guys will ever be football players. I have my doubts, but one thing I know for sure, those yardbirds," he called them yardbirds. That was a derogatory term because a yardbird was just an ugly bird in your yard. He goes, "Those yardbirds will never play football because they quit, and you can't be a football player if you quit." So it was an inspirational moment for us, but a terrible thing for those guys. And they had leather helmets.
I love the leather helmet spinning on his head.
It was too big for his head.
That's like out of a cartoon. You would see that in a cartoon.
I've actually had people tell me lately that those helmets, those leather helmets, were safer in terms of concussions than what we have now because they were soft. They weren't hard shelled.
Wow.
But I'm not advocating bringing back the leather helmets.
We're not advocating for that either, but I will say a throwback uniform, I could get behind that.
As long as it's not a real leather helmet.
As long as it's not a real leather helmet. WV Hog fan asks, and this is our final question of the show, will Texas be fined for throwing water bottles on the field? Do you agree with me that that is much more dangerous than a bunch of happy fans rushing the field after a win?
Yes, and apparently the SEC agrees
because
yesterday they announced a $250,000 fine to Texas, and it's paid to the SEC. It's not going to Georgia.
Nope.
It's going to the SEC. But beyond that, they also said, we expect you to use every means possible to identify those that were throwing bottles onto the field. So I assume they're going to review all these cameras.
Well, did you see what was on social media today? And I don't know if it's true or not. It may be a hoax. But I was seeing that the Barstool account for Texas was posting, hey, did you see what students are getting text messages saying we've revoked, we've identified you.
So maybe they've already defended.
Maybe, I don't know if it's a hoax. Please don't, come at me if it's proven to be a hoax.
They've been told
but I was
to
seeing
do that, to try and find out who these people are and to ban them permanently. They want them banned permanently. And then the other thing is they said, we also expect you to do a complete review of your alcohol sales policies.
Yes.
And then determine, any changes that need to be made. And then you need to resubmit that to us and all of that stuff, your effort to find the perpetrators, your effort to improve your alcohol policies, and you submit that all back to us, and then we'll decide if we take away your right to sell alcohol.
I love it.
Now, here's the thing. This is what I think is the only thing good about this week, this past
Welcome
week.
to the SEC, Texas.
Here's Texas. All they did was brag when they got into the league. We're going to win it all. We're going to do this, blah, blah, blah. And then they looked like they were because they were undefeated and they were sailing along. And then all of a sudden, right there in front of their own fans, Georgia came in and said, no.
No.
And now they're also saying, and by the way, you can't get away with stupid stuff like that anymore because in this league, we punish the fool out of you.
We will.
So they're being told, you got to do this stuff or else.
Exactly.
They never got told anything like that in the Big 12. They never got told anything like that in the Southwest Conference.
Because they ran it. They ran those conferences. They ran it. You don't run the SEC, buddy. You do not run the SEC. They will
So welcome.
fine you.
That was good.
So welcome to the SEC, Texas. I hope you like it here. I hope that's your first
I hope it's not their only loss.
I hope it's not either. And hey, they have to play the big bad boys this week,
That would be
Mike.
so good. That would be so good
They
if
have to-
Vanderbilt beats them.
Oh, we would all be cheering. I think everybody across the league would be so happy if Vanderbilt beat Texas. That'd be great. Hey, maybe it'll happen. Crazier things have happened when it comes to college football. Thanks so much for watching this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer your questions.